This is pretty much my expression throughout this whole movie. Hey everyone, this is Marmaduke Animation Bliss, and welcome to my At the Movies Corner, where I review the most recent movies that just came out. So today's most recent animated film I wanted to talk about today is Netflix's newest film, Marmaduke. And before I get into my thoughts about this film, here are a few words from the channel. Alright Animaniacs, now let's get on the social media train. Want to chat with us in 100 words or less? Then check out our Twitter account. Want to chat with us within a group? Then check out our Facebook account. Want to get the lowdown on everything dealing with animation on this channel? Then check all the above. And now, we return to our regularly scheduled program. So the film is about a Great Dane dog named Marmaduke, who despite being a very friendly dog, is also capable of getting into a lot of trouble. And it was then that his family, the Winslows, decided that Marmaduke needed to be trained. And it was then that a famous dog trainer comes to the Winslows' house and tells them that he will start training Marmaduke for the upcoming dog show. And everything is going fine for Marmaduke until Marmaduke meets up with his rival Zeus, and Zeus ends up trying to do everything he can to make sure that Marmaduke doesn't win the next dog show. So before I get into my thoughts about this movie, here's a brief history that I had with Marmaduke as a franchise. So I noticed that Marmaduke was based off a comic strip series, but to be honest, I haven't really read the comic strip series, so I don't know much about Marmaduke as a character. However, I was introduced to Marmaduke early on through the 1980s cartoon series called Heathcliff and Marmaduke. That was probably my earliest introduction to the character, and then after that I watched the 2010 live action movie where Owen Wilson voiced Marmaduke, and I have to say that that movie was not that great. So when I realized that Netflix was bringing back Marmaduke after Marmaduke hadn't been on the movie scene for over 10 years, I will admit that I was a bit surprised at this because I hadn't seen Marmaduke in the movies since the 2010 live action version, and I was wondering if they were ever going to approach Marmaduke again in the movie format, but here we are and they're doing another Marmaduke movie. So what are my thoughts about this movie? Before we get into the nitty gritty of the review, let's talk about some of the things I did like about this movie. I did find some of the moments in this movie funny. Like, there were some moments that did get a chuckle out of me, and it's very few and far between, but yeah, there were some funny moments in this movie. Another thing that I did like about this movie was some of the animation did look really good, like mostly during the dog show scenes, especially the scenes involving Zeus and how they kind of exaggerate how his hairstyle kind of gives off this glow that mesmerizes the audience. I really like those scenes involving Zeus because I did find those scenes to be really funny. Now, let's get into what I didn't like about this movie. So the first thing I didn't like about this movie were the characters themselves. Like, I felt like the characters were very flat and they weren't that well developed. I didn't even care much for Marmaduke as a character in this movie because he wasn't developed very well in this movie and he felt like such a flat character. And I wish that we got to know more about the Winslow family and about Marmaduke himself and about how Marmaduke came to be and stuff like that. Like, I felt like the movie just kind of glossed over all of that and I just couldn't really sympathize with any of the characters in this movie. Another thing I didn't like about this movie was that this movie had a lot of cringy moments. Like, I just found myself really cringy throughout this movie because there was just too many cringy moments with the characters and the situations they were in, and I just couldn't really get into this movie without cringy all the way through. And then another thing I didn't like about this movie was the pacing itself. Like, I felt like the pacing for this movie was really slow, and I felt like this movie went on much longer than it needed to. Like, I believe this movie is over 90 minutes long, and even though that's usually a short running time for most movies, it felt very long for me in regards to this movie. And I felt like they could have trimmed down some scenes, or they could have added more exciting scenes to this movie just to make the pacing go up a bit in regards to this movie. And then the last thing I didn't like about this movie were the character designs themselves. Normally I don't mind weird character designs as long as the setting they're in is like weird like the characters themselves, but in the case of this movie, the character designs look too off to me. Like, you have some characters who have really skinny limbs and big bodies, and it just made them look so awkward throughout the whole movie. And even when the characters are moving, it seems like the CGI animation kind of dips a bit whenever the characters are moving around, because you have these character designs where the characters have thin limbs and large bodies, and it doesn't really support the move cycles that well. So I didn't care much for the character designs in this movie, and I especially didn't like the way that Marmaduke himself looks like in this movie. Like, he looks very bizarre in this movie, and it was very off-putting to me. But overall, I didn't really care much for the Marmaduke movie. Sure, there was some funny moments in this movie, and some moments did have some good animation, especially during the dog show scenes, but overall, I just found myself really cringy throughout this movie, and I felt like that if they had just developed the characters a bit better, and if there wasn't so much cringe moments in this movie, and if the character designs didn't look so off-putting, I probably would have enjoyed this movie a lot more. And it's a shame that this is another blunder with the Marmaduke movie franchise. Like, I always felt like whenever they try to turn Marmaduke into a movie franchise, it doesn't do that well, which is a shame, because I think that the premise of the comic strips and the show itself, or at least the Heathcliff and Marmaduke show, seems really interesting, and I just felt like whenever it comes to the movies, they don't really portray this character very well. So here's to hoping that we have another Marmaduke movie in the near future that's actually much better than this animated movie they try to do. But overall, I wouldn't recommend this movie unless you're curious about the Marmaduke character. And if you're not curious about the Marmaduke character, or you don't care much about Marmaduke, then I wouldn't recommend this movie. So that's my review on Marmaduke, and let me know in the comments down below. Have you seen Marmaduke? And if you have, did you like this movie? Did you hate this movie? And what's another animated movie that you've seen that was based off a comic strip character? Please let me know in the comments down below. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is Rabbit's Law Animation Bliss, and I'll see you guys later. Hey animation fans, like this video? If you want to see more animated content from this channel, then please hit that big old animated subscribe button so that you can get more awesome content from this channel.